They came through the clouds like gods, their ships dark and enormous, covering the sky in a shadow that stretched across oceans and continents. And for the first time in recorded history, Earth stood beneath an alien fleet so massive that day turned into night, and every human, soldier, scientist, farmer, child, looked up in fear, wondering if this was the end of their world. The Galactic Union did not arrive quietly. They wanted power, they wanted control, and they wanted to make sure humanity understood its place. Their leader, tall and cold, spoke through a booming broadcast that echoed across every screen on Earth, calling humans weak, primitive, emotional, fragile, a species too small to survive what was coming. They spoke of a powerful alien empire on its way, a force that supposedly destroyed entire civilizations, and they claimed Earth would be the next target. They pretended to offer help, protection, safety, but their eyes were filled with arrogance, not kindness, and their words carried one simple demand: hand over control of Earth, surrender full authority, obey the Galactic Union, and in return they would save humanity from destruction. Cities fell silent, leaders froze, militaries trembled, and billions listened as the Union mocked Earth, laughing at human weapons, laughing at human history, laughing at human hope. They said humans had nothing, no advanced fleets, no powerful technology, no great armies. They promised that without alien protection, Earth would burn. And in their arrogance, they expected fear. They expected panic. They expected surrender. But instead, something strange happened. Behind the silence of every human face, behind every nervous soldier and every frightened leader, there was a spark, small, quiet, unbroken. The humans listened, but they did not bow. They did not cry. They did not kneel. And that disturbed the Union more than anything. Their scanners swept across the surface of Earth, searching for weapons, searching for fleets, searching for signs of power. But they found nothing that matched their expectations. Human warships were tiny. Human missiles were outdated. Human defenses looked laughable. The Union smirked, already celebrating victory, already planning how they would rule Earth as a colony. But then, in a moment so sudden the officers aboard the flagship froze. Their scanners picked up something impossible, something massive, deep beneath the Earth's crust. A reading so large, so ancient, so powerful that the entire system glitched. Alarms blaring, screens flashing, officers shouting in panic. At first, they thought it was a mistake, an error, a malfunction. But when they reran the scan, the result appeared again, stronger, clearer, undeniable. Something enormous was buried under Earth. Something artificial. Something older than any weapon the Union had ever seen. Something that should not exist. The alien commander's confident smile faded into confusion, then fear, as he demanded deeper scans, only for the results to worsen. The underground mass wasn't just large. It was colossal. Bigger than any Union warship. Bigger than any known station. Bigger than anything humanity should have been capable of building. It wasn't a bunker. It wasn't a base. It wasn't a mine. It was something sealed, something dormant, something waiting. The Union officers whispered nervously, their arrogance crumbling as numbers filled their screens. Energy signatures off the charts. Alloy compositions unidentifiable, architecture beyond recorded knowledge. The commander's hands shook as he whispered the words no alien had ever imagined speaking. This should be impossible. But Earth didn't answer. Earth didn't explain. Earth didn't panic. The humans simply stood there, calm, quiet, still. And slowly, one by one, their expressions began to change. Not fear, not confusion, but something far more unsettling. They smiled. A quiet, knowing, almost amused smile that spread across the faces of military leaders, scientists, government officials, ordinary people. Humanity smiled as if this moment was not a threat, but a joke. The Union's arrogance shattered. Their officers demanded answers, shouting through broadcasts, demanding to know what was hidden beneath Earth. But humanity said nothing. Humans simply watched them with a calmness that felt unnatural, a confidence that felt terrifying, and the aliens' fear grew like a storm inside their chests. They expected humans to beg. Instead, humans simply waited, as if they knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. The Union attempted to drill deeper into the scans, but their systems overloaded, sparks bursting from consoles, circuits frying, engines flickering. The underground structure emitted a faint pulse, so faint it barely registered, yet powerful enough to disable half the fleet's sensors. Panic erupted across the alien ships, officers stumbling, alarms wailing, lights dimming as if the planet beneath them had awakened. And then, deep in the silence, something even worse happened. The pulse repeated. Stronger, clearer, rhythmic, like a heartbeat from inside the Earth. The commander staggered back, his voice shaking, his mind spiraling into dread, because no hidden bunker should pulse like that. No weapon should feel alive. And yet, the readings were unmistakable. Whatever was buried beneath Earth wasn't dead. It was waking. And humanity knew it. The humans exchanged glances, their smiles growing just slightly, and the commander finally understood the horror of the situation. Earth was not unprotected. Earth was not helpless. Earth was not weak. The humans had something. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something the Union could not comprehend. Humans did not fear the approaching empire. Humans did not fear the Union. Humans did not fear invasion. Because humanity had prepared long before the galaxy ever noticed them. The Union had come to offer protection, expecting gratitude and obedience. But humans did not need protection. Humanity had its own shield buried deep beneath the soil, older than the Union, stronger than any empire. A secret so enormous it made the galaxy's greatest weapons look like toys. And as the pulse echoed one more time, deep, resonant, unstoppable, the humans finally spoke, their voices calm, steady, and terrifyingly confident. We were never the ones in danger. And the galaxy realized, too late, that they had come to threaten the wrong species. Earth never needed protection. Panic did not explode all at once. It arrived slowly, like a rising tide that no one could stop, creeping into every alien mind as the heartbeat beneath Earth grew stronger, deeper, heavier, shaking their ships with a pulse that felt less like sound and more like a warning carved into the bones of the planet itself. And every officer aboard the Galactic Union flagship felt their breath tighten as their screens flickered with red errors, numbers dropping into chaos. Systems glitching like they were being drowned by an energy far beyond anything they had ever encountered, and the commander pressed his trembling hands against the console, trying to steady himself, trying to believe that this was just a malfunction, just a misread, just a glitch. But the fear crawling up his spine told him otherwise, told him that something ancient and impossible was moving beneath the surface, something humanity had hidden so well that the entire galaxy had remained ignorant. For centuries, the youngest alien officer, nervous, wide-eyed, barely trained, looked up from her console, her voice shaking like cracking glass as she whispered that the pulse wasn't random, wasn't mechanical, wasn't artificial. It was emotional. It carried a frequency that registered not on scanners, but on biological sensors, like it was reaching into their nervous systems, whispering into their instincts, and she choked out that she could feel it. Feel pressure in her chest, feel heat rising in her bones. Feel something watching them from deep below, something powerful and old and utterly awake. The commander snapped at her to maintain control, but his own voice trembled, betraying the fear he could no longer hide, because even he felt it. A weight, a presence, a silent awareness that seemed to stretch up from the Earth and press its hand against every alien heart. More ships arrived above Earth, answering distress signals, expecting a weak world in need of help, expecting a grateful species ready to surrender. But instead they found a silent planet with billions of calm faces, humans standing in streets, on rooftops, behind windows, staring up at the alien fleet without panic, without tears, without desperation, and that silent confidence was more terrifying than any weapon. A species that knew it was helpless would beg. A species that knew it was defeated would kneel. But humanity did neither. They simply waited, their eyes steady, their posture relaxed, like spectators rather than victims. And that sight made every alien officer feel their skin crawl. The commander demanded a full military scan of Earth's military might, determined to prove, to himself, if nothing else, that humans were defenseless. But when the results came back, the bridge fell silent. Earth had no fleets outside its atmosphere. No orbital defenses. No starships. No interstellar weaponry. Nothing but small, outdated vessels and outdated missiles that wouldn't survive even a second against Union firepower. By all logic, Earth was weak, and yet humanity wasn't afraid. That contradiction stabbed terror into the Union's confidence like a knife. Weak species begged for help. Weak species clung to their protectors. Weak species did not smile at towering war fleets. So why were humans smiling? Before anyone could think further, another massive pulse shook the alien ships, making metal groan, rattling every deck, forcing several officers to stumble as lights dimmed and flickered. This time the pulse was accompanied by a deep vibration in the ground below, felt even from orbit. A tremor so vast that oceans stirred and mountains quivered. A tremor that originated from the same impossible structure buried deep beneath Earth. The Union's scientific division scrambled to run geological scans, their fingers shaking on their controls, but what they discovered made their blood run cold. The underground object was moving. Slowly, deliberately, as if ancient doors were shifting open after a silence so long it nearly broke reality. The scientist leading the analysis fell back in his chair, voice barely audible as he reported that the structure was not natural. Not geological. Not a cavern. Not a tunnel. It was engineered. Constructed. Purpose-built. A megastructure the size of a small moon, buried under Earth for thousands of years. And worse, energy signatures were rising inside it, not like a reactor powering up, but like a heartbeat finding its rhythm, getting louder, stronger, faster. The commander felt his pulse hammer painfully in his throat as he whispered that Earth should not have the resources, the intelligence, the time, the technology to build such a thing, and the scientist, voice cracking, replied that Earth didn't build it recently. It had been there long before the Galactic Union even existed. The bridge erupted into horrified whispers. If humanity had possessed such power in the past, why had they hidden it? Why had they stayed quiet? Why had they let the galaxy believe they were weak? Why had they never used it? And that question burned into every mind like a brand, because power unused was more terrifying than power displayed. It meant humanity wasn't desperate. It meant humanity wasn't reckless. It meant humanity was waiting. Suddenly, communication channels crackled with static, then opened without permission, connecting every ship, every officer, every fleet to a single transmission. But no voice came through. No message. No threat. Just a low, resonant hum, deep, steady, unbroken. The same rhythm as the underground heartbeat. It echoed through metal, through bone, through thought, and in that suffocating hum, every alien felt the same overwhelming truth. Earth was not asking for protection. Earth was warning them, and then, for the first time since the Union's arrival, a human leader stepped forward on a global broadcast. Calm eyes, steady breath, no fear in his voice, as he looked directly into the camera and spoke 10 simple words. You came to protect us from something that fears us. Gasps filled the alien ships. Officers froze. The commander staggered back, his heart pounding as the meaning hit him. Whatever ancient enemy was coming, whatever force the Union feared, whatever threat they believed would destroy Earth, humanity was not afraid of it. Humanity was ready. And as another pulse rumbled through the planet, a pulse so powerful it shook clouds and cracked the atmosphere with lightning, the humans finally smiled wider, their confidence no longer quiet but undeniable, and the alien fleet understood the most horrifying truth of all. Earth was never the one being hunted, Earth was the one being avoided. The next pulse didn't just shake the alien ships, it seemed to shake reality itself, a deep, thunderous tremor that rolled through the air, through the oceans, through the ground, through every cell and every heartbeat on Earth. And even though the aliens floated safely in orbit, they felt it like a blow to the chest, a crushing pressure that made lungs seize and thoughts falter, as if something enormous beneath the planet had exhaled for the first time in thousands of years. The lights inside the flagship flickered violently, screens turning black for a split second before bursting back to life with distorted data. Scrolling symbols no one recognized, shapes twisting and reforming like a language from a time the galaxy had forgotten, and officers shouted, hands trembling over failing controls. But no command worked, no override answered, no system obeyed. It was as if Earth itself had reached up and wrapped an invisible hand around their technology, silencing it with a single thought. The commander tried to force his voice steady, barking orders, demanding composure, demanding answers. But every word died in his throat as a new image appeared across the screens. An enormous circular doorway deep beneath Earth's crust, metal plates grinding, sliding apart, releasing clouds of dust and steam that had been trapped for millennia. And as the doorway opened wider, revealing nothing but black, a cold realization spread through every alien heart like ice. This structure wasn't a bunker. It wasn't a mine. It was a vault. A vault meant to contain something powerful enough to require a prison the size of a small moon. And that prison was opening. The youngest officer staggered forward, her voice barely a whisper, shaking so hard she could barely stand as she choked out that the energy readings inside the vault were rising exponentially. Not slowly, not cautiously, but explosively, as if something inside had been waiting for activation, waiting for a signal, waiting for the moment the galaxy came close enough to witness, and now that moment had arrived. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest, gasping, because she could feel it again. That pressure, that presence, not violent but vast, ancient, aware. It didn't feel like a weapon powering up. It felt like a mind waking. More ships in orbit panicked, pulling back, engines firing in frantic bursts. But even as they retreated, they couldn't escape the growing hum vibrating through space. A low, steady rhythm that felt eerily alive, like a heartbeat echoing through the void. Scientists shouted into their comms, their voices cracking as they explained that the frequency of the pulse was not random. It matched human brainwave patterns. It was synchronized to humanity. It wasn't reacting to the aliens. It was reacting to the humans. Calling to them. Answering them. And that terrifying connection made the commander's knees weaken, because it meant one undeniable thing. Whatever lay beneath Earth wasn't built by strangers, wasn't left by invaders, wasn't some relic of a dead species. It was human. Suddenly, every broadcast screen on Earth, every phone, every television, every billboard, blazed to life at once, glowing with a single red symbol, ancient and jagged, pulsing in the same rhythm as the underground heartbeat, and billions of humans stared at it, silent and still, as if they understood what it meant, as if they had always known this day would come. The alien fleets watched helplessly, horrified, as the humans looked at each other, not with confusion, not with fear, but with recognition. Something deep inside humanity was remembering. Another tremor shook the planet, stronger, sharper, cracking ice shelves, rippling through deserts, sending shockwaves across oceans. Massive continents vibrated like a drumhead struck by a giant's fist, and a huge metallic panel, hundreds of miles wide, shifted beneath the Pacific Ocean, sending a towering wave rippling outward. The tectonic plates groaned under the weight of movement too large to comprehend, and alarms across the alien ships screamed that the underground structure was rising. Not opening, rising. The scientist monitoring the seismic readings collapsed into his chair, his voice cracking as he reported that the structure wasn't just a vault. It was a construct, a massive artificial body buried beneath the planet, large enough to alter Earth's gravitational field, large enough to rewrite everything the galaxy thought it knew about human capability. And as the numbers kept climbing, as the readings kept spiking, he suddenly fell silent. His eyes wide with terror as he whispered that the structure was bigger than any known city, bigger than any known ship, bigger than anything the Union had ever catalogued, bigger than the planet itself in technological complexity. The commander could barely breathe as the truth clawed its way into his mind. Humans hadn't been hiding weakness. They had been hiding history. A history the galaxy never imagined. A history so ancient and powerful that it made every modern empire look like children playing with toys. The Union had believed it was offering Earth protection. But now, staring at the impossible structure rising beneath the crust, shaking the planet like a heartbeat racing toward full consciousness, the commander finally understood the horrifying truth. Earth didn't need protection from the Empire coming. The Empire needed protection from Earth. And as the final pulse thundered through the air, making clouds burst apart and lightning tear across the sky in blinding arcs, the humans finally lifted their heads, their smiles widening into something calm, confident, fearless, because they weren't waiting for help. They were waiting for permission. Permission to open the door, permission to wake whatever slept beneath. Permission to remind the galaxy of who they truly were, and that realization stabbed every alien heart like a blade. The humans weren't laughing because they were naive. The ground did not simply shake, it throbbed, like a colossal pulse rising from the core of the planet, and every alien ship in orbit felt the vibration echo through their hulls as if Earth itself were breathing, waking, remembering, and the terror that followed was not loud or chaotic, but silent, crushing, suffocating, like a hand closing slowly around every heart in the sky. Cities across the world trembled, skyscrapers quivering like blades of grass in a storm, oceans rippling with impossible waves, clouds spiraling into unnatural patterns as if the atmosphere was being pulled towards something deep below, and while humanity stood calm, steady, unflinching, the Galactic Union fell apart. Officers shouted broken orders, engineers screamed about failing systems, navigators begged for retreat. But no one could look away from the data flooding their screens. Energy readings rising, seismic waves forming perfect symmetry, and the ancient structure beneath Earth expanding, shifting, unlocking itself piece by piece, like a machine returning to life after a sleep older than memory. The commander leaned over his console, his breath shaking, his hands cold, his eyes wide with a fear so raw it stripped away every layer of arrogance he once carried. Because the scans now revealed things no mind should be able to understand. Massive interconnected chambers, machinery larger than mountains, conduits stretching through the crust like metallic veins, all powering up, all synchronizing, all moving with purpose. And the realization hit him like a blow to the chest. This wasn't a bunker. It wasn't a shelter. It was a network. A planetary machine. A system built around Earth itself. And it was activating. A scientist on the main deck, voice cracking like shattering glass, whispered that the technology inside the structure didn't match anything in the Galactic Union database. Not alien, not known, not even theoretical. It exceeded every recorded civilization in history. It predated them. It overshadowed them. It mocked them. And that meant only one horrifying possibility. Humanity's past was far older, far more advanced, far more terrifying than the galaxy ever imagined. Humanity hadn't been primitive. Humanity had been silent. The screens flickered again, cutting to a feed so ancient and distorted it looked like a memory trapped inside metal. Grainy figures moving through vast metallic corridors, humans dressed in armor that glowed like starlight, carrying tools and devices the Union couldn't comprehend, speaking in a language that vibrated through the room like thunder trapped in whispered form, and behind them towered massive constructions, ships, engines, weapons, so enormous they made the Union fleet look like toys. Scattered across a nursery floor. The image shifted again, showing humans sealing a colossal doorway, placing their hands against the metal as if saying goodbye, and though the sound was broken, the emotion hit like a tidal wave, grief, sacrifice, promise. Then the feed went black. The youngest officer collapsed to her knees, clutching her head, sobbing uncontrollably, gasping that she could feel them. Feel the humans, feel their memory, feel their pain, feel their decision, and her voice trembled as she choked out the unbearable truth. Humanity did not hide this structure because they were afraid. They hid it because the galaxy was not ready. They hid it because they had already fought the war the Union claimed to fear. They hid it because they had survived something the universe still had nightmares about. And they hid it because the rest of existence was too young, too fragile, too arrogant to understand what humanity once was. Another pulse thundered through the earth, more powerful than anything before, splitting deserts, cracking ice shelves, turning storm clouds into spirals of lightning, and deep beneath the ocean, a massive circular plate tore free from the seafloor, rising slowly, revealing a metallic surface so vast it reflected the storming sky like a mirror. The Union ships backed away instinctively, engines firing in panic, because whatever was rising was beyond scale, beyond reason, beyond sanity. It was not a building. It was not a structure. It was the top of something larger, something the scanners couldn't even measure, something still buried beneath kilometers of stone and sea. The commander felt his heart crumble as a horrifying possibility shattered across his mind. Earth wasn't just a planet with a secret. Earth was the secret. A shell. A cradle. A disguise. And humanity had lived their lives on top of an ancient giant, never revealing it, never using it, never boasting about it. That kind of restraint was more terrifying than any weapon, because it meant humans didn't just have power, they had control. They had patience. They had purpose. Then, for the first time, The underground system released a sound, low, resonant, ancient. A single note that echoed across continents and through the void of space. A note that wasn't a warning, wasn't a scream, wasn't a roar. It was a summons. A call. A signal meant for someone, or something, that understood its meaning. And as that note faded, every screen displayed a message written in the same jagged symbol from before, now translated into a language the Union could read. We did not forget who we are. The fleets froze. The commander stumbled backward. The youngest officer covered her mouth, trembling violently. Because the message wasn't prideful. It wasn't angry. It was calm, confident. Absolute humans had not evolved into strength. They had returned to it, and the galaxy, blind, arrogant, reckless, had walked straight into the awakening. The Union didn't threaten Earth. They provoked it. They didn't offer protection. They triggered memory. They didn't warn humanity. They reminded them. The sound, the ancient, resonant note, did not fade into silence. It lingered like a vibration inside every living body, a trembling echo that seemed to crawl beneath skin, into bone, into thought, and for the first time since the Galactic Union arrived, the aliens felt something far worse than fear. They felt small, pathetic, insignificant, as if the universe itself had shifted, placing humanity above them in a hierarchy they never knew existed. On the bridge, no one spoke. No one breathed. The commander stared at the screens with hollow eyes, watching seismic readings climb higher, watching energy levels spike beyond measurable limits, watching the underground megastructure continue to unlock itself like a titan stretching after an eternal sleep. His hands shook so violently he had to grip the edge of the console just to stay standing, because the truth was no longer hiding in numbers or theories. It was alive, it was rising, it was undeniable. Humanity had been pretending to be weak, pretending to be small, pretending to be vulnerable. And now the mask was falling off. Across Earth, billions of humans watched the skies, not with terror, but with something heartbreakingly calm. Some stood on rooftops, hands in pockets. Some sat on beaches, eyes fixed on the horizon. Some stood in quiet streets, heads tilted, listening as if they recognized the sound beneath the tremors, as if it was a memory calling them home. And everywhere, on every screen, that same glowing symbol pulsed like a heartbeat, reflected in human eyes that did not flinch, did not panic, did not break. It was as if humanity had always known this day would come, and the realization punched the alien fleets with a force stronger than any weapon. Humans weren't surprised. The only ones in the dark were the aliens. Another pulse surged through the underground construct, stronger, sharper, hotter, with a burst of energy so powerful that the oceans rippled outward, waves towering and curling like liquid mountains before settling as if forced back down by an unseen hand. Mountains trembled. City streets cracked. Clouds split apart in spirals of lightning that twisted like veins across the sky, and suddenly the megastructure shifted again. A massive metallic ring rotating deep beneath the crust, and seismic sensors screamed with readings that made no sense. Earth's gravitational field was changing. Not collapsing. Not failing. Changing. Adapting. Aligning with the structure below, like the planet was synchronizing itself to a forgotten frequency. The youngest officer gasped, pressing both hands against her mouth, her voice shaking as she whispered that she could feel something rising, not physically, but emotionally, like a storm building inside her chest. A storm she didn't understand, a storm that didn't belong to her, yet moved through her with a force that made tears spill down her cheeks. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was something deeper, an ache filled with memory, with longing, with the weight of years humanity had carried alone. She cried harder, shaking her head, whispering through broken breaths that she could feel them. Feel humanity's past, feel their silence, feel their sacrifice, feel the weight of a burden they never spoke about. A burden they never asked anyone to share it on the flagship. The scientist monitoring the energy surge collapsed into his chair, staring at his readings with wide, haunted eyes. His voice came out in a whisper so weak it barely carried across the bridge, saying the words no one wanted to hear. It isn't just a machine. It's a weapon. But even that wasn't enough. His voice cracked further as he continued, trembling. It's a weapon designed by a civilization far beyond anything we've ever seen. And humanity didn't lose it. They sealed it. The commander's heart stopped. The implication was devastating. Humans didn't forget their power. They hid it. Voluntarily, quietly, patiently. And that meant something even more terrifying. Humans were not awakening because the Union threatened them. They were awakening because the universe had crossed a line it should never have touched. A new tremor shook the planet. But this one was different. Calmer, rhythmic, controlled. And then, deep beneath the earth, a massive panel slid away, revealing a chamber so vast it defied comprehension. Glowing with light so bright it radiated through the oceans, casting shimmering red streaks across the waves, visible even from space. The alien fleets watched in stunned silence as the chamber pulsed, each beat synchronized with the symbol still burning across every human screen, and slowly, horrifyingly, the chamber began to rise. Not the whole structure, just a single piece of it. A platform, a dock, a cradle, and on that cradle sat something enormous. A shape, a silhouette, a vessel, a ship forged from metal no database recognized, braced with architecture that defied engineering, covered in runic patterns that glowed like burning embers. It was older than the Union, older than the empire they feared, older than recorded history. A warship the size of a continent. A warship born from humanity's forgotten age. And it was waking. The commander staggered backward, staring with shaking eyes, whispering a broken plea that no one heard. Why didn't they use it? Why didn't they tell us? And the answer hit him like a blade, because they didn't need to. Because humanity never needed the galaxy. Because humanity had always been enough on their own. Then, across every human broadcast, across every alien screen, across every device in orbit, a message appeared in calm, quiet text, pulsing in perfect rhythm with the rising ship. We survived before .3 words, .3 wounds, .3 promises. And as the warship rose higher, water crashing off its surface like a tidal crown, the humans finally lifted their chins, their smiles turning sharper, colder, fearless. Because they weren't waiting to be saved. They were waiting to return, and the galaxy finally understood the most terrifying truth of all. Humanity did not need protection. The warship did not rise quickly. It ascended with a slow, deliberate grace that felt more terrifying than any violent eruption, lifting from the ocean like a sleeping giant remembering how to breathe, water cascading down its colossal frame in roaring waterfalls, steam hissing into the sky as the sun glinted off armor so dark it seemed to swallow the light around it, and for a moment the entire planet held its breath, as if Earth itself knew that something sacred, something forgotten, something unstoppable was returning to the world. The alien fleet drifted backward instinctively, engines flaring in panic. But it wasn't a tactical retreat, it was fear pulling them away like a force of gravity, because every soul aboard every ship felt the same crushing truth in their bones. They were witnessing something that should not exist, something beyond science, beyond logic, beyond the galaxy's understanding of power. The ship's surface wasn't smooth metal, it was layered, armored, etched with ancient runes that pulsed like veins filled with starlight, each symbol flickering in the same rhythm as the planetary heartbeat that had shaken the Union to its knees. And as those runes lit brighter, alien sensors went dead one by one, systems collapsing under waves of energy that felt less like technology and more like will. The youngest officer stumbled back from her console, tears streaking down her cheeks not out of terror, but from something far more overwhelming, emotion, raw and unfiltered, surging into her mind like a memory that didn't belong to her, a memory of struggle, of fire, of a war fought in silence, and she clutched her chest, gasping through trembling lips that she could feel them. Feel the people who built this ship, feel their desperation, feel their hope, feel their final vow. Down on Earth, crowds formed along coastlines and mountaintops, millions gathering in stunned silence as the ship rose higher, higher, blocking out the sun, casting a shadow across entire continents. And in that vast darkness, humanity did not scream. They stood with steady faces, eyes glistening, as if they weren't seeing something new, but something familiar, as if they were welcoming back a part of themselves they had lost. Some reached out hands as if touching an invisible thread between past and present. Some whispered prayers, some simply watched with quiet, aching reverence, but all of them carried the same expression, recognition. Like somewhere deep inside their blood, their bones, their history. They had always known they came from something greater than the galaxy believed. The commander on the flagship tried to speak, tried to order a withdrawal, tried to call for reinforcements, but the words stuck in his throat, strangled by the unbearable understanding forming in his mind. He had mocked humanity. He had called them weak. He had believed they were primitive. But now, staring at the awakening Titan below, he realized the most horrifying truth of all. Humanity had allowed the galaxy to believe that. They had chosen silence. They had chosen stillness. They had chosen to hide their power. And a species that could hide something like this for thousands of years was not weak. They were patient. Another tremor shook the sky, but this time it wasn't the planet. It was the ship itself, the runes along its hull flaring bright red, then shifting to a cold, blinding white, releasing a soundless wave that rippled through the atmosphere. Every alien ship flickered, every engine sputtered, every weapon powered down, and a suffocating stillness swallowed space as the Union realized. Not a single system they possessed could even touch this vessel. It wasn't just advanced. It wasn't just ancient. It was untouchable. Then, without warning, the ship's massive core ignited, a beam of light firing upward like a pillar of pure energy, stretching into the void, piercing the clouds, the atmosphere, the heavens, sending ripples through space that made stars flicker like candles in a storm. The scientist, voice quivering beyond control, stammered out readings that made no sense, energy levels exceeding planetary output, core signatures rivaling entire star systems, reactor power spiking into realms no empire had ever reached. It wasn't a ship. It was a star forged into metal. The youngest officer collapsed to her knees again, whispering in a broken voice that she could hear something, not sound, not words, but something like emotion pouring from the vessel, not hatred, not rage, but grief, a deep, aching grief that felt like mourning for a world that had forgotten, mourning for a sacrifice no one remembered, mourning for a war humanity had fought alone while the galaxy laughed. And as that emotion washed over her, over the fleet, over every trembling mind, she realized something that shattered the last remnants of arrogance in her heart. Humans did not build this ship to conquer. They built it because they had to. A final pulse shook the sky, and then, for the first time, a voice, not spoken aloud, not transmitted through technology, but projected directly into every mind, echoed through the void, calm and steady, filled with something ancient and unbreakable. We protected ourselves before. 4 words that felt like thunder splitting the soul. 4 words that were not a threat. They were a reminder. On Earth, millions of humans lifted their heads, tears in their eyes, not from fear, but from pride, from memory, from the weight of something returning that they had never truly lost. The ship rotated slowly, pointing its bow toward the stars, engines burning like newborn suns, and humanity, at last, exhaled, not in relief, but in readiness, because they were not rising to be saved. They were rising to fight again, and the galaxy understood, too late, that humanity's silence was never weakness. It was the inhale before a roar. The roar did not come as sound, it came as motion, a movement so vast and deliberate that the entire planet seemed to shift beneath it, the colossal warship, tilting forward as if acknowledging gravity one final time before rejecting it entirely, rising higher, higher, until the oceans beneath it churned into spirals and the clouds above it split apart like torn fabric, and in that impossible ascent every alien heart clenched with the same paralyzing realization. This was not the peak of human power. This was only the beginning. The Galactic Union fleet drifted backward in pure instinct, engines flaring in panicked bursts, formations collapsing into chaos as captains screamed over failing channels, begging for distance, begging for orders, begging for a reality in which something like this could not exist. But no distance felt safe, no retreat felt far enough, because the warship was not chasing them, it was overshadowing them, its presence alone crushing their confidence like a dying star collapsing on itself. Inside the flagship, the commander finally broke, not with a scream, not with a command, but with silence, his breath trembling as he stared at the ship's rising form, eyes reflecting the blinding white glow pulsing along its runic veins. And in that glow he saw something that shattered him completely: purpose. Not chaos. Not rage. Purpose. A purpose so old, so absolute, so deeply woven into the fabric of humanity that it made every alien mission, every alien empire, every alien war feel like childish, meaningless noise in comparison. He sank into his chair, his voice barely a ghost as he whispered that they had never been protectors. They had been trespassers, stumbling into a history that did not belong to them, waking a force that did not fear them, disturbing a species that had already walked through hell and survived down on Earth. Tears streamed down human faces, not from terror, but from something raw, aching, beautiful, a kind of pride so deep it hurt to feel. A pride born from silence, sacrifice, and a resilience no one else had ever understood. Families held hands without speaking. Soldiers lowered their weapons, not in surrender, but in reverence. Children pressed their palms to screens displaying the ship's image, their eyes wide, their hearts beating in the same rhythm as the vessel's pulse, as if every human on Earth was connected to that warship by a single shared memory. A memory they couldn't name, but felt burning in their bones. For the first time, the galaxy wasn't looking at humanity like prey or subjects or primitives. They were looking at them like survivors of a war too vast to comprehend. The youngest officer shook violently, her voice breaking into sobs as she whispered that she could feel a second presence awakening. Not inside the ship, not inside the planet, but inside humanity itself, like every human heart was stirring, unlocking, remembering who they had been before history was erased, before silence buried their truth, and she cried harder, choking on the overwhelming flood of emotion, grief for the battles they fought alone, pride for the victories they buried, sorrow for the lives they lost, and love, yes, love, for a world that stood quiet for thousands of years, carrying a burden no other species even knew existed. Another pulse surged from the warship, but this time it wasn't directed at the planet. It rippled outward into space, a silent shockwave that rippled across the void, bouncing off moons, shattering asteroids, distorting starlight as it spread farther, 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 until the fleet's navigators gasped in horror, reporting that the wave was traveling beyond the solar system, beyond mapped space, beyond anything the Union could track. It wasn't an attack. It was a signal, a call, a warning, a declaration. The commander's voice cracked as he demanded a translation of the ship's energy pattern, and the scientist, pale, shaking, barely able to breathe, forced out the translated meaning in a whisper that felt like a death sentence. "We are awake." The words struck harder than any weapon, harder than any explosion, harder than any threat, because they weren't aimed at the Union, they were aimed at the universe. At whatever ancient enemy once drove humanity to build this Titan. At whatever force the galaxy feared but did not remember. At whatever darkness was coming. And then, for the first time, a human commander appeared on a global broadcast, standing on a platform overlooking the rising ship, wind tearing at his uniform, eyes steady with a calm that bordered on terrifying, and he spoke not with anger, not with arrogance, but with a quiet strength that made every alien soul tremble. "You came to protect us. But you don't even know who you're threatening." The line sliced through the fleet like a blade, because there was no mockery in it. No fear. No hate. Just truth. Pure, devastating truth. Humanity had endured alone. Humanity had survived alone. Humanity had prepared alone. And now, they were done hiding. As the warship cleared the atmosphere, engines igniting with a blinding light that curved space around it. Earth itself seemed to exhale, and the humans, millions of them, closed their eyes, letting that light wash over them like a memory returning home. And in that moment, the galaxy realized the most emotional, most terrifying truth of all. Humans didn't laugh because the threat was funny. They laughed because the threat was small. The warship did not disappear gently. It vanished with a silence so enormous it felt like the universe itself had paused to watch, its colossal frame folding into a tunnel of blinding white light that bent space around it, warping the stars like ripples on water. And for a single breathless moment the sky above Earth became weightless, soundless, timeless, as if reality itself was holding still in awe of what had just awakened. Then the light snapped shut, the ship was gone, and the world fell into a silence so deep it echoed across continents, leaving humanity standing beneath an empty sky with tears on their cheeks and fire in their hearts, because they knew, every single one of them knew, that their story was no longer bound to Earth. It was reaching for the stars again, but the silence did not bring peace to the Galactic Union. It brought collapse. On the flagship, alarms wailed, engines sputtered, and terrified officers scrambled for control as their systems surged back online only to reveal something far worse than malfunction. Dozens of new signals appearing across the galaxy, faint at first, then growing stronger, clearer, undeniable. The youngest officer stared at her screen, her hands trembling uncontrollably as she watched hundreds, no, thousands, of identical energy signatures flicker into existence, scattered across distant star systems like embers bursting back into flame. Each one matching the warship's signature. Each one waking. She choked out a whisper, barely able to force breath through the shock tightening her chest. There's more, so many more. And the commander felt his knees give out as he collapsed into his chair, his voice hollow, shattered, defeated, because the truth had finally ripped through every wall of arrogance the Union had ever built. Humanity had never been alone. They hadn't built one weapon. They had built a fleet. A fleet hidden across the galaxy like sleeping giants waiting for a signal. And that signal had just been sent down on Earth. Millions stood frozen, staring at the sky even though the ship was gone, as if they could still feel its heartbeat inside their own chests, and in a way, they could. Something deep and ancient stirred in the marrow of every human bone. A pull, a memory, a calling that brought tears to their eyes, not from fear, but from recognition, as if a part of themselves that had been sleeping for thousands of years had just opened its eyes. Some humans fell to their knees, not in worship, but in overwhelming emotion, because they understood now that their silence had not been emptiness. It had been healing, recovering, preparing. The oceans calmed. The clouds settled. The trembling earth fell still. But beneath that stillness, a hum remained, soft, constant, steady, like the echo of a heartbeat that would never again be silenced. Humanity felt it. Every alien felt it. And the galaxy knew that the world they had mocked, dismissed, belittled, and threatened had just revealed a truth too massive to contain. Earth was not the cradle of a weak species. It was the birthplace of a sleeping empire. The commander tried to speak, to warn his fleet, to issue orders, but all that came out was a broken whisper. We thought we were offering protection. And then his voice cracked, eyes filling with tears as he finished. But we were begging them not to wake up. The youngest officer covered her face, shoulders shaking as she cried, not from terror, but from the unbearable weight of understanding that humanity hadn't laughed out of arrogance. They had laughed out of certainty. The certainty of a species that had already faced the darkness the galaxy feared, and survived. Then, without warning, every screen in every alien ship flickered to life one final time. No symbols, no runes, no heartbeat, just a single line of calm, steady text glowing white against a black void. We remember who we are and no threat. No rage, no demand. A promise. And before anyone could react, a new signal appeared, far beyond mapped space, beyond the Union's borders, beyond the reach of any known civilization. A colossal energy surge so massive it shook the fleet's sensors into static. A presence so powerful it made every officer's blood run cold. Something ancient. Something terrifying. Something moving. The scientist, voice cracking in terror, whispered, "It's coming. The thing they fought before, it's coming back." The commander stared into the void, his heart collapsing under the weight of realization. This wasn't the beginning of a war. It was the return of one on Earth. A single human child looked up at the sky, wiped a tear from her cheek, and whispered with a small, trembling smile, "They're not protecting us. We're going to protect them." And somewhere far beyond the stars, the warship answered with a pulse, a distant thunder in the dark, as the newly awakened fleet ignited one by one like stars being reborn. Humanity wasn't waiting anymore. Humanity was coming, and this time, the galaxy would not be laughing, it would be praying.